Hello, you're welcome. In this video, I want us to look at how you can find a number's factorial or its possible number of combinations and permutations. So when we have a problem that requires us to look for this information, there are certain functions that are inbuilt in Excel that make it easier for us to get all this without having to go with the manual form of calculations. For example, for factorial, we know that factorial returns the product of all positive integers up to n. That's if we want to return the factorial of n. If n is the number we want to return its factorial. So let's say n is 7, for example. If we want to get the factorial of 7, it's going to be 7 multiplied by 6 multiplied by 5 multiplied by 4 multiplied by 3 multiplied by 2 and multiplied by 1, which gives us 5040. So we can just use the fact function here. We enter 7 and you see how easily it gives us the same result. So instead of going through this manual calculation. Another function is the fact double. And for the fact double, it returns the double factorial of n, which is the product of every second number down to 1 or 2. So down to 1 when we have an odd number, and down to 2 when we have an even number. For example, we can check the double factorial for either 7 or 8. Since 7 is odd and 8 is even, let's see for both of them. So if we're checking for 7, it's going to be 7 times 5 times 3 and times 1. And if we're checking for 8, it's going to be times 6 times 4 times 2. Okay, so you now see that for this one now it ends in 1, while for even it ends in 2. So if we try using the double fact function here, which is fact double, and we enter 7, you see we have exactly what we got for 7. And let's change this to 8, and you can see we have the result just as it is for the long method of doing this for 8. Next function that I want us to look at is what we call the multinomial function. So this multinomial function returns the number of ways we can arrange items with duplicates. So let's say the item I want to get the number of ways I can rearrange with duplicate it, banana. So for banana, you can see I have 1B, I have 3 A's, and I have 2. For me to be able to return the number of ways I can arrange these items with duplicates, I just use multi. And then for my B here, I count, it is just 1. For my A, it is 3. I enter the 3. For my N, it is 2. And this shows me that I have 60 as the number, which is the number of ways I can arrange my items with duplicates. So the number of ways I can arrange these items with duplicates is 60. Now, another function that we want to now see is the permute function, which is used for permutation. Okay, and as we know, for permutation, order actually matters. So when we want to arrange a number of ways, okay, when we want to get the number of ways we can arrange k items from n, that is when we use permute. In this case, order matters since it is permutation. But when we want to check for the number of ways we can choose k items from n, where order does not matter, we are going to use the combine function, which is for combination. Okay, so that's what we are going to see here. So if we start with permute, it gives us an information of what this, and then we want to choose our number. Let's say, for example, we have 5 stocks. I want to be able to pick 3 stocks for our. We want to have the 3 ways we can pick 3 stocks, okay, with different weights. That is when we now add these 3. So in total, we have 5 stocks, but we want to pick just 3 for our portfolio, okay? And these 3, we want the 3 to have equal weight. As one can be 60% of our portfolio, the other can be 30% of our portfolio, and the third will now be 10% of our portfolio. You see that gives us 60, which is the number of ways we can make this selection. Now, if in our case now, we do not want order, that is, we want to, since we have these 3 here, we want to work with 33%, 33%, and 33%. That is having the same exact form of weight for our portfolio. We are going to be using the function, which is for combination. Okay, so here we have 5 and 3. So we want to have equal weight for our portfolios. So in this case, we are just having 10 returned to us. Now remember that for the permute function, we allowed for non-repeated items. So we do not allow any item to be repeated, okay? If we want items to be repeated, in this case, you're not going to be using function again, but we're going to be using another function we call permutation. So it works just the same way as permut works, to arrange k items from an order matters. However, in this case, it allows repeated items. So if we do permutation now, you can see that here it tells us that it allows repetitions. That's just the difference it has with. So here we still work with our 5 stocks and we want to make 3 selections, okay? But remember that in this case, even though order matters, just like we did earlier, we had 60 as the first weight, as the second weight, and 10 as the third weight. However, in this case, it will allow repetition, okay? So it should give us a number that is greater than the 60 that we had earlier for permute. So you can see it gives us 125 here since we are permitting repetitions. Now, if we want to permit repetitions for combination, if you remember combination, we are checking for the number of ways we can choose k items from n where order does not matter. Now, for combination, for us to get items, for us to be able to allow for repetitions, we are going to be using the function, okay, which is different from the combine function. So combine function returned 10 for us. But in this case, if we use the combiner function, which allows for repeated items, it should give us a number greater than 10. So let's combine now. We are still working with our 5 stocks and we want to make 3 selections. So you can see it's giving us 35, which is far greater than the 10 that we had earlier when we are not working with repetition. And these are just the few functions that I want to demonstrate for us in our usage of Excel for mathematical calculations and where it involves selections like factorials, permutations, and combinations. And I hope you've been able to find this video helpful. Please, if you have, kindly like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Thank you, and I'll see you in the next one.